Hello, YouTube. Welcome to a new day 365. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jim, and this is my channel on addiction, relapse, and recovery. You know, I was slacking, and I have some homework to do, and I thought, why not kill two birds with one stone? Um, and so I'm going to read. I have this paper to read, so why not read it out loud and share it with you? Then we can all get some new information. So this is the phases and warning signs of a relapse. This is taken from a paper written by Terence Gorski and Marlene Miller. The relapse syndrome. Relapse does not happen when someone takes the first drug or drink. Relapse is a process that starts long before a person begins to use. The relapse process causes one to feel pain and discomfort when not using. This pain and discomfort can become so bad that a person becomes unable to live normally when not using. In Alcoholics Anonymous, this is called a dry drunk, but the syndrome is recognized in all areas of addiction and is, in essence, abstinence without recovery. The discomfort can become so bad that it feels that using can't be any worse than the pain of staying clean. Phase 1, return of denial. During this phase, a person becomes unable to recognize and honestly tell others what she is thinking or feeling. The most common symptoms are 1, concern about well-being. A person feels uneasy, afraid, and anxious. At times, she is afraid of not being able to stay drug-free. This uneasiness comes and goes and usually lasts only a short time. 2, denial of the concern. In order to tolerate these periods of worry, fear, and anxiety, someone ignores or denies these feelings in the same way he or she had at other times denied being addicted. The denial may be so strong that there is no awareness of it while it is happening. Even when there is awareness of the feelings, they are often forgotten as soon as the feelings are gone. It is only when one thinks back about the situation at a later time that he or she is able to recognize the feelings of anxiety and the denial of those feelings. Phase 2, avoidance and defensive behavior. During this phase, one doesn't want to think about anything that will cause the painful and uncomfortable feeling to come back. As a result, he or she begins to avoid anything or anybody that will force an honest look at self. When asked direct questions about well-being, they tend to become defensive. The most common symptoms are 3, believing I'll never use again. A person convinces itself that he or she will never use again and sometimes will tell this to others, but usually keeps it to the self. Many are afraid to tell their counselors or other fellowship members about this belief. When a person firmly believes that they will never use again, the need for a daily recovery program seems less important. 4, worrying about others instead of self. The person becomes more concerned with the recovery of others than with personal recovery. She doesn't talk directly about these concerns, but privately judges the recovery programs of other recovering persons. In the fellowship, this is called working the other guy's program. 5, defensiveness. A person has a tendency to defend when talking about personal problems, feelings of their recovery program, even when no defense is necessary. 6, compulsive behavior. One becomes compulsive, stuck, or fixed, or rigid in the way that they think and behave. There's a tendency to do the same things over and over again without a good reason. There's a tendency to control conversations, either by talking too much or not talking at all. He or she tends to work more than is needed, becomes involved in many activities, and may appear to be the model of recovery because of heavy involvement in fellowship 12-step work. Examples: chairing meetings. The person is often a leader in counseling groups by playing therapist. Casual or informal involvement with people, however, is avoided. I don't know if I agree with those examples. 7, impulsive behavior. Sometimes the rigid behavior is interrupted by actions taken without thought or self-control. This usually happens at times of high stress. Sometimes these impulsive actions cause a person to make decisions that seriously damage his or her life and the recovery program. Tendencies towards loneliness. A person begins to spend more time alone. They usually have good reasons and excuses for staying away from other people. These periods of being alone begin to occur more often, and a person begins to feel more lonelier. Instead of dealing with the loneliness by trying to meet and be around other people, he or she becomes more compulsive and impulsive. Phase 3, crisis building. During this phase, a person begins experiencing a sequence of life problems that are caused by denying personal feelings, isolating self, and neglecting the recovery program. Even though they want to solve these problems and work hard at it, two new problems pop up to replace every problem that is solved. The most common symptoms are 9. Tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is seeing only one small part of life and not being able to see the big picture. A person looks at life as being made up of separate, unrelated parts. They focus on one part without looking at other parts or how they are related. Sometimes this creates the mistaken belief that everything is secure and going well. At other times, this results in seeing only what is going wrong. Small problems are blown up out of proportion. When this happens, a person comes to believe that he or she is being treated unfairly and has no power to do anything about it. 10. Minor depression. Symptoms of depression begin to appear and to persist. The person feels down, blue, listless, empty of feelings. Oversleeping becomes common. She is able to distract self from these moods by getting busy with other things and not talking about the depression. 11. Loss of constructive planning. The person stops planning each day and the future. They often mistake the slogan, one day at a time, to mean that one shouldn't plan or think about what they are going to do. Less and less attention is paid to details. They become listless. I don't know what listless means. Plans are based more on wishful thinking, wishing how things would be than reality, how things really are. 12. Plans begin to fail. Because he or she makes plans that are not realistic and does not pay attention to details, plans begin to fail. Each failure causes new life problems. Some of these problems are similar to the problems that had occurred during the using. He or she often feels guilty and remorseful when the problems occur. Phase 4, immobilization. During this phase, a person is totally unable to initiate action. They go through the motions of living, but is controlled by life rather than controlling his or her life. The most common symptoms are 13, daydreaming and wishful thinking. It becomes more difficult to concentrate. The if only syndrome becomes more common in conversation. A person begins to have fantasies of escaping or being rescued from it all by an event unlikely to happen. 14. Feelings that nothing can be solved. A sense of failure begins to develop. The failure may be real or it may be imagined. Small failures are exaggerated and blown out of proportion. The belief that I've tried my best and recovery isn't working begins to develop. 15. Immature wish to be happy. A vague desire to be happy or to have things work out develops without the person identifying what is necessary to be happy or have things work out. Magical thinking is used, wanting things to get better without doing anything to make them better. I hate fucking sociologists. Phase 5, confusion and overreaction. During this period, a person can't think clearly. He becomes upset with self and others, becomes irritable and overreacts to small things. 16. Periods of confusion. Periods of confusion become more frequent, last longer, and cause more problems. One often feels angry with self because of the inability to figure things out. 17. Irritation with friends. Relationships become strained with friends, family, counselors, and fellowship members. The person feels threatened when these people talk about the changes in behavior and mood that are becoming apparent. The conflicts continue to increase in spite of a person's efforts to resolve them. The person begins to feel guilty and remorseful about his or her role in these conflicts. Easily angered. A person experiences episodes of anger, frustration, resentment, and irritability for no real reason. Overreaction to small things becomes more frequent. Stress and anxiety increase because of the fear that overreaction might result in violence. The efforts to control self contributes to the stress and tension. Phase 6, depression. During this period, a person becomes so depressed that they have difficulty keeping to normal routines. At times, there may be thoughts of suicide, using, or drinking as a way to end the depression. The depression is severe and persistent and cannot be easily ignored or hidden from others. The most common symptoms are 19. Irregular eating habits. A person begins overeating or undereating. There is weight gain or loss. Uh, he or she stops having meals at regular times and replaces a well-balanced, nourishing diet with junk food. 20. Lack of desire to take action. There are periods when a person is unable to get started or get anything done. At those times, they are unable to concentrate, they feel anxious, fearful, and uneasy, and often feels trapped with no way out. 21. Irregular sleeping habits. The person has difficulty sleeping and is restless and fitful when sleep does occur. Sleep is often marked by strange and frightening dreams. Because of exhaustion, they may sleep for 12 to 20 hours at a time. These sleeping marathons may happen as often as every 6 to 15 days. 22. Loss of daily structure. Daily routine becomes haphazard. A person stops getting up and going to bed at regular times. Sometimes they're unable to sleep, and this results in oversleeping at other times. Regular meals times are discontinued. It becomes more difficult to keep appointments and plan social events. The person feels rushed and overburdened at times and then has nothing to do at other times. That just sounds like regular life. He or she is unable to follow through on plans and decisions and experiences tension, frustration, fear, or anxiety that keep him or her from doing what needs to be done. 23. Periods of deep depression. The person feels depressed more often. The depression becomes worse, lasts longer, and interferes with living. The depression is so bad that it is noticed by others and cannot be easily denied. The depression is more severe during unplanned or unstructured periods of time. Fatigue, hunger, and loneliness make the depression worse. When a person feels depressed, they separate from other people, become irritable and angry with others, and often complain that nobody cares or understands what they're going through. Phase 7, behavioral loss of control. During this phase, a person becomes unable to control or regulate personal behavior and a daily schedule. There is still heavy denial and no full awareness of being out of control. He or her life becomes chaotic and many problems are created in all areas of life and recovery. The most common symptoms are 24, irregular attendance at fellowship and treatment meetings. The person stops attending fellowship meetings regularly and begins to miss scheduled appointments for counseling or treatment. They find excuses to justify this and don't recognize the importance of fellowship and treatment. They develop the attitude that meetings and counseling aren't making me feel better, so why should I make it a number one priority? Other things are more important. Excuse me. Pardon me. 25. Development of an I don't care attitude. The person tries to act as if he or she doesn't care about the problems that are occurring. This is to hide feelings of helplessness and a growing lack of self-respect and self-confidence. 26. Open rejection of help. A person cuts themselves off from people who can help. They do this by having fits of anger that drive others away, by criticizing and putting others down, or by quietly withdrawing from others. 27. Dissatisfaction with life. Things seem so bad that the person begins to think that they might as well use because things couldn't get worse. Life seems to have become unmanageable since using has stopped. 28. Feelings of powerlessness and helplessness. A person develops difficulty in getting started, has trouble thinking clearly, concentrating, and thinking abstractly, and feels that they can't do anything and begin to believe that there is no way out. Phase 8. Recognition of loss of control. The person's denial breaks, and suddenly they recognize how severe the problems are, how unmanageable life has become, and how little power and control they have to solve any of the problems. This awareness is extremely painful and frightening. By this time, they have become so isolated that there's no one to turn to for help. The most common symptoms are 29, self-pity. The person begins to feel sorry for self and often uses self-pity to get attention at fellowship meetings or from members of family. 30, thoughts of social using. The person realizes that drinking or using drugs would help him or her feel better and begin to hope that they can drink or use normally again and be able to control it. Sometimes these thoughts are so strong that they can't be stopped or put out of mind. There's a feeling that drinking and using is the only alternative to going crazy or committing suicide, because those are the only options. Drinking, using actually looks like a sane and rational alternative. 31, conscious lying. The addict begins to recognize the lying and the denial and the excuses but is unable to interrupt them. 32. Complete loss of control. The person feels trapped and overwhelmed by the inability to think clearly and take action. This feeling of powerlessness causes the belief that he or she is useless and incompetent. As a result, there is the belief that life is unmanageable. Phase 9. Option reduction. During this phase, the person feels trapped by the pain and inability to manage his or her life. There seems to be only 3 ways out: insanity, suicide, or drug use. Fuck, you keep fucking putting that suicide in there, don't you? He or she no longer believes that anyone or anything can help him or her. The most common symptoms are: 33. Unreasonable resentment. A person feels angry because of the inability to behave the way he or she wants to. Sometimes the anger is with the world in general, sometimes with someone in particular, and sometimes with self. 34. Discontinuance of fellowship attendance and all treatment. The person stops attending fellowship meetings. When a helping person is part of treatment, tension and conflict develop and become so severe that the relationship usually ends. The person drops out of professional counseling even though he or she needs help and knows it. 35. Overwhelming loneliness, frustration, anger, and tension. A person feels completely overwhelmed. He or she believes that there is no way out except using, drinking, suicide, or insanity. There are intense fears of insanity and feelings of helplessness and depression. Phase 10. Acute relapse period. During this phase, the person becomes totally unable to function normally. He or she may use drugs or alcohol or may become disabled with other conditions that make it impossible to function. The most common symptoms are: 36. Loss of behavioral control. A person experiences more and more difficulty in controlling thoughts, emotions, judgments, and behaviors. This progressive and disabling loss of control begins to cause serious problems in all areas of life. It begins to affect health and well-being. No matter how hard he tries to regain control, it is impossible to do so. 37. Acute relapse period. The person experiences periods of time when she is totally unable to function normally. These periods become more frequent, last longer, and begin to produce more serious life problems. All right, without putting too much of my own opinion into that, I'm gonna end this video now. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.